Hi everyone, my name is TJ. I'm from Auckland, New Zealand, and back in October 2022, it was just an ordinary everyday weekend, and I was out with my daughter, and we'd just been shopping at a mall, had lunch, everything was normal, and I went into a store to get something. It was just an errand I was running, and I'm walking along, and my right-sided leg, I started tripping over my foot, and I just thought, this is weird, what's going on? I must be walking too fast, and you kind of justify it in your head as this is starting to happen. So I thought, okay, I just need to slow down so I don't trip over my feet. And as I was thinking that and walking along, I was then conscious I was having to actually physically sort of tell my leg to lift itself, and I could feel this heaviness all coming down the right side as well. And as it was happening, I was just thinking, ooh, this is not good, this is not normal. And by the time I got to the counter to buy the product, my brain was starting to scramble, and I went to get my cards out of my phone and my bag, and I managed to do all that and then get out of there, and I'm walking out to the car when my daughter was just waiting for me. And I just thought, this is weird, something's just happened, and it sort of feels like I'm having a stroke, but surely not, I can't be having a stroke, I'm too young. You sort of justify it again. And I hopped in the car and I just said to my daughter, I think you should drive. I'm just feeling a bit weird. Something's not quite right, so I think maybe you should drive. So she did, and as we were driving home, I just thought, should I go to hospital? That could be a good idea, but I don't want to bother them, maybe it's not serious. And as I was thinking that, my husband phoned me, and that particular weekend he was actually in another hospital on the other side of town because his mum had just had a very serious medical event and she had been admitted on the Saturday. So me and my daughter, after lunch, were meant to go up to the hospital to visit him in this hospital on the other side of town. So that was the plan, and of course with all that what had just happened to me, we didn't get there. And so he phoned and he said, where are you? And I told him what had happened, and he was like, just go to hospital, just get to hospital. So that's what we did. So we drove to the closest hospital. We get to A&E, and so I walk into A&E, and by that time I'm feeling a little bit like a fraud. So while my daughter was parking the car, I'm talking out what had just happened, and they just said, okay, you straight through now. So I got admitted directly through to A&E, and my daughter came through, and things just started to unfold at that point. So the doctors were just checking all the vital signs to see what had happened, and I'd lost strength all down my right side, and I was starting to seizure as well, so that just added another element of drama to the event. And so I'm seizuring and weak on my right side, my brain feels weird, but I'm still conscious and cognitive and aware of everything. So I really felt for my daughter because she saw all of this happening to me, and she was just so brave. And we then went through and they had to get CAT scans and stuff. So I went and got the CAT scan done, and by that time my husband was rushing from one side of the city to the other to see what was going on with his wife. So, he had his mum dying in one hospital and his wife having a stroke in the other hospital. So it wasn't one of our best weekends, you could say. So by the time he had got there, they'd done the CAT scan, and they came through and they said, okay, we've done the CAT scan, we think you've had a TIA, which is a mini stroke, and we can't see it on the CAT scan yet, but we'll need to book you for an MRI, and that will show us the extent of things. And that particular weekend was a long holiday weekend in New Zealand called Labour Weekend. So I was in hospital on Sunday when all that happened. Monday was a holiday, so they couldn't book me for the MRI that day. And so I had to just wait for my turn to have an MRI. So in the meantime, they gave me some medication for drugs that dissolve clots and get the blood flow going so that stroke damage hopefully is not as bad as what it could be. That was the first day. And the second day, after a very sleepless night, sleeping in A&E is not an easy experience. Lots of disturbance and noise and other people's dramas and traumas going on around you. So they admitted me and I ended up through on one of the wards. When they came to us with the CAT scan results, they said, we think you've had a TIA. Oh, and by the way, we found a lesion in your brain as well, which is a lump that's not meant to be there. And so when you get that news, it kind of triggers a bit of a response in you. And I just was thinking, well, that's not good. Okay, I'm having a stroke, and now you're telling me I've got something in my brain, a lesion, a lump, a tumor of some kind, that also needs to be looked at. So that wasn't a great train of thought either, but I sort of had to park that. I just thought, okay, we'll deal with that later, because right now the stroke's happening and we need to get that sorted out. And the next day I'm in hospital thinking, okay, they'll probably discharge me after this MRI. It's probably a minor stroke, I'll go home and sort of manage from there. And then while I was in hospital on that second day, I had another one. This time I felt my right side literally shutting down, like you start going into paralysis, and they were trying to determine what had caused the stroke. So yeah, I was admitted to the cardiovascular ward, and at that point they started to do the investigations that they need to do to figure out what had happened and what caused my stroke, because I didn't tick any of the boxes in terms of risk factor at that time. Like before I had the stroke, I'd been making all these adjustments with diet and health and exercise, and so I was in a pretty good space and not at risk, you would think, of something like that. So yeah, that second one happened, and I remember it was on the third night I was in hospital, and I went to phone my husband and say, this is getting really bad, can you get everyone praying? Because when these things happen, initially, you keep it very close. It's just your immediate family members and, people who know and you can sort of trust with that information. But when that started to happen, I just thought we need to call in the troops. We need to get others who have got faith and who can pray and hold this place for me, because, here's my body just literally shutting down on one side, and I could feel my motor control going and my muscle control going. But it's like when you take the plug out of a bath and you watch the water go down the sink and then it's all gone. It felt like that was happening in my body on my right side. And as I tried to say this sentence to my husband, it just came out as this mumble and this slur, and I just thought, oh my gosh, I can't speak now, this is bad. But he managed to pick up the gist of what I was saying, and he just got on the job and he sent it out, and I think it went viral, and there were quite a few hundred, maybe a few thousand, I don't know, people who got on to praying as this was happening to me. So I was just lying there in my hospital bed feeling pretty awful. And then I felt fear come into the room. And it was literally like a claw, like a big grip of something that wanted to just become a part of this experience that I was going through. And, my spirit, that part of me that was able to function, just said, no, you're not having any part of this. Whatever happens here is in the Lord's hands. He gets to call the shots on what's going on in my body. So I felt it leave. It was this tangible kind of coming for me moment, fear. And then me rising up and in my spirit just literally pushing it away, and I felt it leave, and it literally left the room. And then from that moment on, I just wasn't dealing with a feeling of fear. So, that was a moment. And about an hour and a half after that of me lying in my hospital bed, just not able to move and feeling everything shutting down, I felt strength starting to drain back onto my right side. And I could feel the prayers of people out there who were praying for me. It felt like the tide was now rising again, and I was getting strength back into that part of my body. And that was very encouraging to know that there were other people out there who were praying for me and standing in that place of faith and believing that, God was at work in the midst of this situation. And then I got transferred across to the stroke ward, because I finally got the MRI done, and when they showed me the picture of that, there was clear signs that yes, I have had a stroke, and there was a part of my brain that is now dead. It was a left corona radiata stroke, which is sort of the center middle part of your brain, which controls speech, swallow, and right side function. So that's what was shutting down and not functioning for me. So I got transferred across to the stroke ward at that point. By day 6 we'd had the official diagnosis, she's had a stroke. Now we need to work through rehab and see where we go from there. So that day was Halloween, and you know when you're in a hospital you're sort of in a bubble, and whatever's going on outside you have no idea. You're not watching the news, you're not keeping up with things. But I do remember that night there was a big storm, and then the storm sort of finished. At one point, about 3 or 4 in the morning, I had to get up, go to the bathroom, sort of stumble my way over there with my little walker because I couldn't walk properly and I needed assistance. But I thought I'll get to the bathroom by myself. Got there, started walking back, and I collapsed. My strength just kind of went, and I fell over my walker that I was holding onto, and I just had to hold it because I thought if I fall and land on the floor, damage is done worse then. So if I can just hold on to this walker and just stand here like frozen, I can't move, but I'm here, someone will find me eventually. And it just so happened that a nurse did walk past the ward very soon after that and saw me just standing there, unable to move, and helped me back to my hospital bed. And again, when I got back to the hospital bed, I went into violent seizures, like really bad. Nurses ran off to try and find a doctor and see what was going on with me. And the seizures started to die down while they were off finding help. Nurses came back and things had sort of calmed down again. And they thought, okay, we'll just leave her to sleep now. And at that point, after all that had happened, I was feeling quite emotional. And my mother had died just 5 months earlier to this stroke event I had. And when you're in low moments, sometimes, grief also comes in you have those memories. And I was just lying there in my hospital bed just thinking, I want to see my mum. Just feeling upset and thinking of my mum and just crying out to God, I'd love to see my mum. Could I have a vision or a picture of her in heaven or something? And then at that moment, it was like the Lord Jesus just came, because I had this heightened sense of whatever was happening in the spiritual realm. It was like he just came and he was there and he appeared, and I could feel my heart slowing down and I could feel my breathing slowing down, and everything kind of went into this state of just stopping. And Jesus was there, and then he said to me, do you want to see your mum, or do you want to see me? And I went, yeah, I want to see you, I want to see you. I want to have that kind of moment. And I could feel that sense your spirit separates from your body. There was this kind of lifting away feeling, and I ended up in this place that was blue. It was the colour of sort of sky, cornflower bed blue, a beautiful blue. And I got the sense that it wasn't water and it wasn't liquid, but it had this sort of translucent quality of water. And there was me and Jesus together in this circular space of blue. I didn't have a feeling of rushing through a tunnel or anything like that, but it was just entering into this place of perfect stillness and perfect peace in the presence of Jesus. People think, how did you know it was him? I don't know, you just know. I have a relationship, I'm a believer. I'm very aware of the Lord operates through the Word and the Bible and in our lives and experiences. And there he was. And then he said, do you want to go? And at that point, I knew what he was saying. I knew that he was saying, do you want to go? Do you want to come to heaven? Do you want to leave this earth and leave what's behind here? My body recovering from a stroke, possibly disabled, possibly having to go through the rehab that follows all of that. Or do you want to come into eternity with me? And it was very tempting, very, very tempting at that point, because you don't know what you're going to be left with here on earth, in terms of your physical body. And the thing that stopped me going was the thought of my daughter. So my brave daughter, who had been there when I had the first stroke, she saw me go through the second stroke, and I just thought, I can't leave my daughter without me being here for her. And then my husband, of course, I thought of him as well. And then it was enough for me to not sort of step into that next realm. The thing that blew my mind was that he gave me a choice. And I guess for some people maybe there isn't a choice. I don't know, if you're taken suddenly in a car accident or something. I don't know how other people's experiences play out. But for me, when I got to that point, he gave me a choice. And that to me was very powerful. Because what I know of my relationship with the Lord, it's about choice and free will. And I felt that, that was just a moment that I will treasure. And there I was, still with Jesus in this other kind of altered space, aware that I'm still lying in a hospital bed, but sort of not really aware that much of it, because what then starts to unfold it becomes the reality that I'm in. So it's like being in communion. You're as one with the Lord. You're having conversations. I'm asking him the mysteries of the universe. He's answering me. I'm asking him questions about my family and things that have happened in my past, or relationships with my children, all of those things, and he's just talking conversationally, and I'm understanding the bigger picture stuff, the priorities of life, the things that are more important to us in this earth, loving people, our relationships and our connections. So as that was happening, I started to hear the sound of rushing water. Yes, my body is still lying in a hospital bed, but I'm having this experience that the Lord is showing me of this other realm, and there's the sound of rushing water. And I just thought, what is that? And I thought initially, is someone having a shower? It's 3 a.m. Is there water running down the pipes in the hospital somewhere? But I was aware the sound was right around me. Like, I'm in the hospital bed and it sounded like I was in the middle of a rushing river. And I was thinking, surely other people can hear this. And then I noticed and I was aware that all the sound of all the call bells had just stopped and there was just silence. I was in this quiet little space, but whatever was happening with me was perhaps affecting the atmosphere around, and all that crazy activity that had been happening when people were distressed and call bells were going off and nurses were rushing everywhere. It all stopped, and the hospital felt really peaceful, and there was this rushing water sound, and I was thinking, how can no one else hear this? But it was like all the other ladies on my ward were asleep, all the nurses had disappeared. It was just me and Jesus in this rushing water kind of experience. And at the time, I just said, what is going on, Lord? What does all this mean? And why am I hearing this water? And he said to me, you're in the river and I'm healing you. I'm bringing healing back to your body. And I could just feel that sensation happening through me. And at the time, that was happening. It was pretty amazing, because I do know the word, and in the Bible I remember thinking there's something in Revelation that relates to this. And so I realized that there's a verse in the Bible which speaks about what I'd actually been experiencing. It's in Revelation 22. The angel showed me the river of the water of life, as clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and the Lamb. On each side of the river stood the tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit, yielding its fruit every month, and the leaves of the trees are for the healing of the nations. And at the time, that verse wasn't dictating what was happening. I'm in the river, Jesus is healing me, and I'm aware that there's trees on both sides of the river, and that this river is flowing back through, and I can remember it was on the east. It was on my right side, it was flowing east. There was a distinct feeling of the water that was coming from that east, the city of God, the throne of God, and I was aware that there was this city and a wall, and like turret, like a city that kind of looks like something from a fairy tale, I guess, glowing and golden and beautiful in the distance, and from it flowed this river. And I was now in this river, and the Lord was there. And these trees that have the leaves for the healing of the nations were right around me. And so that was quite a powerful experience. And it was like through all of that, it was like he then kind of brought me back to myself. That part of my spirit that had kind of entered into that realm kind of came back. And then I felt like, okay, I am back in my hospital bed. And wow, that was amazing. And Lord, thank you for showing me that and that experience. And the rest of the night, I was just pondering all of this. And for the next few days, I was still in hospital. I then had to go into stroke rehab, learning how to walk properly, learning how to hold a knife and fork and be able to eat. And all of those things were happening in the next few days after that. And 3-4 months later, I'm still slowly recovering, and I'm now back at work, unable to drive, and I'm starting to function, and everything's kind of coming online. And I was reading the Bible at some point, and I just stumbled upon a verse, and when I did, I just thought, oh my gosh, that is what he showed me when I was in the river by the trees near the city. The city of God, the river that flows from the east side, the trees. To me, it wasn't like some crazy supernatural scene I was in. The trees looked like trees. They were green, they were beautiful, they were perfect. The grass was green and perfect. So that happened, and then I read months later, there's a verse in Ezekiel, which is Ezekiel 43, and it said, Then the man brought me to the gate facing east, and I saw the glory of the God of Israel coming from the east. His voice was like the roar of rushing waters, and the land was radiant with his glory. And that was what I experienced, when he first came to me. It was in that way where your spirit's talking to his spirit and you're having a sort of a person-to-person experience. And then when I went into that river and the sound of the actual audible sound of that water rushing around the hospital bed I'm sitting in was that sound. And when I read that in Ezekiel, I was just like, wow, God, you really, have laid things out there for us to understand and relate to. So, I was able to just kind of put some things in the context, I guess, of my faith and what I know of my relationship with God. I believe that the Lord has such a grace and a love for us. He gives us those moments right up until, those 11th hour and even beyond, into that next realm of where you're in that place between life and death. And that's a place where the realm of the spirit operates in the context of why I know in my faith, that God's love was around me as I was having that stroke. After I had that experience, this Jesus experience, I went into this kind of rapid, accelerated healing process. And the doctors were like looking at me like, we don't see this. This isn't normal stroke recovery. We don't see people get out of here in 10 days. And I was in a ward with women that had been there for weeks and months. And they were still not able to feed themselves, not able to toilet, not able to get up and function, or they couldn't walk, they were completely disabled. And there was I up and starting to walk, shuffling around on my walker, and then they discharged me on day 10. And when they handed me my discharge notes, it was at that point I thought, I need to find out what's happened with the brain tumour. Where's that at? So I asked them, because it wasn't on my discharge notes, and they hadn't said anything about it. So on the last day when the doctor came to me and gave me those notes, I asked her, I said, so what's happened with what they found with the CAT scan? They said that there was a brain lesion, it was about 10 millimeters, and it was in a completely different part of my brain from when the stroke occurred. So the stroke occurred sort of left centre here, and the brain lesion was up here, right front. So they were two completely separate events. So I remembered to ask about that, and the doctor looked at me a little bit like, I'm not sure how to answer that, and she said, well, it doesn't appear to be there. They couldn't find it. It was not there. And I absolutely put that down to the power of people praying, the love of God, and Him bestowing on me a miracle of healing through the speed of how I recovered from the stroke, and a brain lesion that was there on a CAT scan, and then 6 days later, not there on an MRI. I don't know how medically they explain it, but that's what happened. And so I'm very thankful and very grateful and feel very blessed that I was able to have that experience, awful as it was. The beauty of meeting Jesus, you kind of can't top that. There's not a lot that kind of goes beyond that, and still come back and to be able to tell the tale as well. So yeah, I hope this can encourage someone out there, in their journey, that there is hope and that there is healing, that there is this other realm of the spirit that the Lord operates in, and the enemy is real, and we have the angelic, the demonic, we have the God who loves us. I just hope that in being able to share this story, it does give someone some hope, whether it be stroke or some other major medical event. And to have that experience where I can't stop breathing, went to this other place, met Jesus, saw things that feel more real than what this life is. What we experience in this life is what it is, our real life. So, embrace it and make the most of it, and be thankful that we, wake up every day and get to live another day and, be a part of other people's journeys. So I think is my story, and I hope in some way you're blessed by it. We shall follow with those eyes, stay also